I always believed that life moved in predictable patterns. You plan, you work, and you build towards something that feels stable, secure. For years, I thought I had mastered that rhythm. A career I was passionate about, a daughter I adored, and friendships that had weathered every storm. Yet, no matter how well you think you've planned, life has a way of throwing unexpected turns your way. Some you see coming. Others, they blindside you entirely. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment when my carefully maintained illusions started to crumble. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small things, the kind of subtle shifts you can ignore if you try hard enough. A slight change in tone, a hesitation in words, glances that lingered a little too long on things left unsaid. I had been here before, standing at the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. And yet, despite everything, I told myself it was nothing. Shauna, my closest friend, hit me with a question I had been dreading but couldn't ignore. Her piercing blue eyes locked onto mine, leaving no escape from the truth she was about to reveal. We sat on her back patio, wrapped in warm sweaters, sipping hot chocolate as a cold ocean breeze swept through Byron Bay. Moments before, the day had been peaceful, but her words shattered that calm, forcing me to confront something I had been avoiding. She didn't ask lightly. There was an unspoken weight between us, a shared history that made this moment even heavier. I had suspected for months that something was wrong in my marriage. Excuses, distance, fewer intimate moments, and tense arguments that had pushed me to the guest room more times than I wanted to admit. Still, I clung to the illusion that everything was fine. Looking away, I focused on the sky, watching the gray clouds drift, hoping to find distraction in predicting the coming rain, but the reality lingered, settling deep in my chest. My 8-year-old daughter, Maddie, played nearby with her stepbrother, Greg, oblivious to the tension thickening the air. Shauna, patient as ever, let the silence stretch, knowing I needed time to process what she had just laid before me. She finally reached into her oversized bag and pulled out an envelope, heavy, unmistakably filled with proof I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The sight of it confirmed what I'd been denying. My wife, Bridget, was unfaithful. The knowledge settled like a rock in my stomach. This wasn't unfamiliar territory. I had been here before, staring down undeniable proof of betrayal. Shauna's husband, Rick, a well-connected family lawyer, was involved, which only complicated things. He and I had a history, part camaraderie, part rivalry. But if he had a hand in this, it meant the evidence was solid. If I opened that envelope, my marriage would be over. A sickening wave of realization hit me. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was facing the reality of another failed marriage before even turning 30. Shauna knew this, and though she held back, her expression said it all. She would stand by me, as she always had. The moment was interrupted by Maddie, who climbed into my lap, unaware of the storm brewing in my mind. She sensed something was off, asking if everything was okay, worried we were fighting like when she was younger. She remembered when Shauna and I were together, before we realized we were better as friends than as a married couple. We had known each other since childhood, best friends since 3rd grade. As teenagers, that bond turned into something more. And before we understood the weight of our choices, we were young parents, then husband and wife. Our families had insisted on a prenup, doubting we'd last, and they had been right. The stress of parenting, work, and growing up too fast took its toll. My long hours as a programmer and entrepreneur meant I was never home enough, and the cracks widened until we couldn't hold it together. Despite everything, we had remained close, raising Maddie with love and respect. But now, as I stared at the envelope in Shauna's hands, I knew I was about to step into yet another painful chapter. My parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement since they were providing startup capital. Shauna's parents agreed, fearing their daughter would be tied to a failing business, but the business thrived. 2 years later, I launched a new company, merging the first into it, forming Other Gaming. By my early 20s, I had a team of 50 across 3 countries, programmers, testers, marketers, and administrators, driving annual revenue of $180 million through free-to-play games with built-in microtransactions. Though modest compared to industry giants, we had never disappointed our investors. Despite early success, my marriage to Shauna unraveled. We cared deeply for each other, were best friends, and shared strong chemistry. But the deeper connection wasn't there. The little irritations, the ones love forgives, became unbearable. My growing business kept me away, adding strain. The constant fights over responsibilities, my work hours, and parenting our daughter, Maddie, took a toll. One evening, a miscommunication, me missing a daycare appointment, her expecting me home, led to an explosive argument. Frustrated, she stormed out, spent the night drinking, and woke up with a stranger. She never tried to hide her mistake, remorseful and in tears, but hearing it crushed me. I lashed out, calling her names. She retaliated, attacking my character, our fight spiraling into something beyond repair. Though she had betrayed me, we both knew our words had inflicted wounds that couldn't be undone. That night, I moved into the guest room, and over the next months, our home became a battleground of arguments and unresolved pain. Eventually, our parents intervened. They sat us down, forcing us to face the damage. The confrontation was brutal, but it made us acknowledge what we had been avoiding. We couldn't keep living like this. For the first time in months, we talked, stripped of anger. She admitted regret, knowing she had let her frustrations dictate her actions. I admitted that while I was hurt, I hadn't been the best husband either. Realizing we functioned better as friends than as spouses, we agreed on divorce. Over time, the bitterness faded, and the bond we once had as best friends resurfaced. Though love remained, it was no longer romantic. Co-parenting as friends became our priority. A year after the divorce, I started dating Bridget, a colleague of Shauna's. She had been hinting at interest, and when I didn't make a move, she did. Shauna gave her blessing, but it was clear it stung. In those early months, she often showed up with Maddie, subtly checking in. Yet, despite lingering emotions, she supported me. Bridget and I clicked instantly. She was fit, confident, and brought laughter back into my life. Months into dating, she confessed her feelings, revealing that after an unhealthy past relationship, she saw me as someone who valued her for more than just appearances. We moved in together, and a year later, she started hinting at marriage. Despite our love, legal complications almost ended us. My company had gained global recognition, and my board insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Bridget resisted, leading to heated debates, but ultimately she signed. Shortly after, we married. Meanwhile, Shauna met Rick, and though I wanted to dislike him, I couldn't. He was a steady presence, offering her the balance I never could. Unlike Bridget and me, who started with passion, Shauna and Rick built something slow and lasting. Despite lingering jealousy, Shauna and I made a conscious effort to keep our friendship intact. We acknowledged our past, but we refused to let it dictate our future. As our relationships evolved, everyone understood that nothing could come between Shauna and me. In the early days of her relationship with Rick, tensions arose, culminating in him hitting me once after seeing Shauna hug me when I dropped off Maddie. By then, they were engaged, and Shauna made it clear to him. There was no reason for jealousy, as I was married to Bridget. 6 months later, I stood as Rick's best man at their wedding. Our dynamic was unusual, but unshakable. With Maddie in the picture, Shauna and I remained connected. Once Rick accepted this, we became close friends. He realized I loved Shauna, but in a way that no longer threatened their relationship. Meanwhile, Shauna and Bridget formed a casual friendship, spending time together when Rick and I were busy. Years later, I found myself sitting with Maddie, trying to explain something no 8-year-old should have to process. She was sharp, already sensing the tension. She suspected it had to do with Bridget, and to my surprise, voiced observations I'd been too blind to acknowledge. Maddie saw how Bridget treated Shauna and me with quiet disdain, how she never showed true respect. It hit me hard. Small moments I had ignored. Subtle slights I let slide in my desperation to make this marriage work. Shauna returned, asking Maddie to take Greg outside so we could continue talking. Our daughter protested, but a firm mom voice settled the matter. As Maddie and Greg played, Shauna confided that Maddie understood far too much for her age. Watching my children, I admitted how much I had overlooked. Shauna and I shared a quiet moment of sadness, both of us sensing the storm ahead. A familiar envelope stuck out of her bag, and I instinctively reached for it. She stopped me, warning that whatever was inside would only bring pain. But I had to know. Inside were 2 documents and a USB drive, one detailing Bridget's infidelity with timestamps, locations, and recorded conversations, the other filled with incriminating photos of her and an ex, Brad Houghton. The evidence showed their relationship escalating from casual coffee meetings to something far more intimate. Some images appeared to be taken from a distance, others from hidden cameras, undeniable proof. Staring at the damning contents, I felt a crushing emptiness. I had suspected something, but seeing it confirmed in black and white was different. I asked the inevitable question, why? But there were no real answers. Rick arrived, instantly recognizing the weight of the moment. He revealed that after conversations with Shauna and Maddie, he had suspected something was wrong. He had hired a private investigator, and the evidence had only been delivered the day before. Though he hadn't gone through all of it, my reaction told him enough. He then made an offer. He would represent me as my lawyer. Without hesitation, I handed him the envelope, but he declined, saying he already had a copy. I emailed him the prenuptial agreement, the irony not lost on me. The man married to my ex-wife was now my divorce attorney, about to dismantle my cheating wife's case. We strategized. Bridget was supposedly visiting her mother, giving me time to act. But Rick and Shauna exchanged knowing glances. She likely wasn't with her mother at all. Another stab of betrayal, but at this point, what difference did it make? As the sun set, Maddie returned, and after heartfelt hugs, I left in my Mustang, the first car I ever bought for myself when my company hit $5 million in revenue. I had built an empire, but at that moment, it felt like I was losing everything that truly mattered. When I arrived home, the security gate shut behind me as I pulled into the garage. The house, a modern, spacious property, belonged to a subsidiary of Other Gaming and was part of my executive benefits package. It was the kind of place Bridget wanted, not me. All I needed was a functional workspace and a bed, but we ended up in a 5-bedroom, 6-bathroom house with an ocean view terrace. Maddie had her own room, decorated to her liking, while one bedroom served as my gaming and computer room. Bridget and I shared the master suite overlooking the water. We had only lived here for 6 months, hosting a few parties and enjoying our honeymoon phase. Now, the thought of Bridget possibly bringing Brad here made my stomach turn. Dropping my bag and the envelope onto the kitchen table, I grabbed a bottle of Bundaberg rum and a cold can of Coke from the fridge. Pouring myself a strong drink, I pulled out my laptop and plugged in the USB drive. I needed to see the truth for myself. As I read through the report, it confirmed what I already suspected. Bridget had a history with Brad before she and I got together. Their relationship had been rocky, but after our wedding, they reconnected. Less than 3 months after our honeymoon, she was back in his bed. The private investigator's records detailed conversations, timestamps, and locations, proving her affair was more than just physical. It was an entire relationship, complete with future plans. The most damning evidence came from a conversation recorded just a month ago. Watching the video, I heard Brad plead with Bridget to leave me, arguing that she spent just as much time with him as she did with me. She laughed, telling him she loved him but had no intention of leaving because I had 2 things he didn't: money and intelligence. She admitted she married me for financial security, seizing the opportunity after Shauna and I split. Brad questioned why she didn't just divorce me, to which she bluntly responded that the prenuptial agreement would leave her with almost nothing unless she stayed married for 10 years. If I caught them, she would be left with only the clothes on her back. Then came the part that made me physically ill. She suggested stopping birth control, getting pregnant with Brad's child, and passing it off as mine. When the child turned 18 and inherited my wealth, she planned to reveal the truth, right before something accidentally happened to me. I barely made it to the bathroom before throwing up. Sleep was impossible that night. I drifted in and out of nightmares, reliving the betrayal. By morning, my phone rang, jarring me awake. It was Bridget, her voice cheerful. She was still pretending. She playfully asked if I had been sleeping while she was away. For a moment, I considered confronting her, but held back. I needed time. Instead, I feigned exhaustion, blaming work. Sensing hesitation in my voice, she asked if I was okay. I reassured her, and she promised to bring me a gift when she returned. Then, as if to twist the knife, she casually mentioned that we could start trying for a baby when she got back. That was enough. The moment she hung up, I cut off her access to my bank accounts, canceled our joint credit cards, and contacted my lawyer and accountant. She was removed from my insurance and my will. I also sent Rick an introduction to my corporate team so he could help handle legal matters. By noon, Rick and Shauna arrived with food. Maddie and Greg went off to play while Rick and I sat down to discuss the next steps. He noted my exhaustion, and I told him everything. When I revealed Bridget's plan to get pregnant with Brad's child and frame me for fatherhood, both he and Shauna were visibly shaken. Rick assured me that divorce proceedings would begin immediately, and he would file a restraining order against both Bridget and Brad first thing Monday morning. Shauna stayed to help me pack up Bridget's things, determined to erase her presence from the house. Rick left for his office to draft the necessary paperwork. While he worked, I went through the detective's evidence again, reliving the nightmare in painful detail. Bridget's betrayal wasn't just infidelity, it was calculated, cold, and ruthless. By evening, Rick returned with takeout, his demeanor somber. He had gone through the evidence and now understood the full scope of the situation. Without a word, he pulled me into a tight hug, offering silent support. I handed him a small sticker with a 6-digit number, the new gate code. Bridget was officially locked out. We spent the rest of the evening finalizing plans. Bridget was supposedly with her mother on the Gold Coast, but Rick and Shauna suspected otherwise. It didn't matter. She had no idea the walls were closing in. The next day passed quietly. Shauna and Rick stayed most of Sunday, making sure I wasn't alone. As they left, Maddie gave me a long hug, sensing something was wrong but not pressing for answers. By Monday, the fight would begin. But this time, I was ready. I had spent countless hours talking with Rick about the divorce process. When Shauna and I split, there wasn't much to divide. Other gaming was barely off the ground. But as the business grew, I always ensured Shauna and Maddie received more than the legal minimum for child support. Bridget's case was different. This wasn't just a failed marriage. It was a betrayal. She had calculated every move, and I wasn't about to give her a dime more than necessary. I knew she would lose it, and Shauna saw it coming when we talked that Sunday morning. Shauna had never trusted Bridget, though she kept her thoughts to herself. "She never really loved you," she admitted, looking at the private investigator's report. I had let Bridget dictate too much, hoping things would work out. But Shauna reminded me that I had allowed myself to be led down a path that was never truly mine. Bridget had played her game well, but eventually her house of cards had to collapse. At least it happened before she managed to trap me with a child. As we talked, Maddie came into the room, guiding Greg as he stumbled along with that infectious joy only toddlers have. We played with the kids for a while before Rick set up a movie for them. Once they left, Shauna's tone shifted. She looked at me with a mix of sadness and sincerity. "I know things didn't work out, but that doesn't mean I love you any less," she said. We had been through hell and nearly lost each other, but I'd never used our history to punish her. Despite everything, we had created something beautiful. Maddie. Rick joined us and, for the first time, truly acknowledged me. As a lawyer, he rarely trusted people, but he trusted me. He had once viewed me as competition, but now saw me as a man who just wanted to raise his daughter and reclaim his best friend. He reassured me that Bridget's downfall wasn't my fault. She had taken advantage of my kindness, and now she was paying the price. The next day, I went to the office, throwing myself into work. We were gearing up to launch a major augmented reality game in 6 months, but my personal life overshadowed everything. By afternoon, I was home, pacing, waiting for what was coming. At 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Bridget, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. She couldn't get past the gate. Her code had been revoked. "I know," I replied coldly. She hesitated, sensing the shift. Then I laid it all out, her affair with Brad, her scheme to pass off his child as mine, the secret apartment I had unknowingly paid for. I knew everything. Her voice wavered, but I didn't let her play her games. "You don't live here anymore," I stated. Panic crept in as she tried to manipulate me, but I was done. As she stood at the gate, 2 cars pulled up. First, a process server handed her divorce papers, a prenuptial agreement, and an eviction notice. Then her mother, Marion, stepped out of the second car. The moment Bridget tried to spin her lies, Marion shut her down with a slap. Marion knew the truth. I had shown her the evidence. She was furious and ashamed of her daughter. "You have nowhere to go," she said, before informing her that she and her father would take her in, though it was clear they weren't happy about it. Bridget finally realized our conversation was still ongoing. "Tim," she started, searching for a lifeline. "It's over," I said flatly. "Follow the divorce terms, and I'll be fair. Cross me, and I'll make sure you walk away with nothing." She fell silent, absorbing the final blow. I sighed. "I loved you once, Bridget, but you threw that away. You were never in this for love. You were in it for the money." I could hear her holding her breath. "Oh, and one more thing," I added. "Take a pregnancy test. If you're carrying a child, we both know it's not mine. Try to drag me into it, and I'll ruin you." I hung up. She sobbed, and for the first time in months, I felt lighter. The following weeks were a blur of work and fatherhood. I buried myself in projects and spent every spare moment with Maddie. But the nights were restless, haunted by anger and regret. Bridget lawyered up, and Rick suspected she'd challenged the prenup, aiming for a 50-50 split. So far, nothing had come of it. I authorized Rick to offer her $30,000 to walk away quietly. No response. Then everything changed over the weekend. Maddie and I had gone to the beach, enjoying ice cream in front of an old fish and chip shop. The place was straight out of the 80s. Beige bricks, a tin roof, sticky linoleum floors, and the lingering scent of fried oil. People lounged in swimsuits and bikinis, towels draped over shoulders, surfboards tucked under arms. The ocean was crisp, refreshing. We swam, rinsed off under a freshwater shower, then sat back down to savor our ice cream, laughing about the waves. And then, out of nowhere, Brad attacked. The world went black. I regained consciousness to the sound of Maddie crying, clinging to me in fear. A crowd had gathered, and Brad was nowhere in sight. Someone had already called emergency services, and sirens were fast approaching. Pain radiated through my back and arm as I forced myself upright, searching for my phone and keys. An older man explained that after the attack, Brad had stood motionless for a few seconds before grabbing my belongings and running off. Realizing I had no way to call for help, I asked for Maddie's bag. A younger man brought it over, and I used her phone to call Shauna. She answered cheerfully at first, but quickly sensed something was wrong. I reassured her that Maddie was safe, but explained what had happened. I asked her to contact Nadine, my executive assistant, to track my stolen phone. Time was crucial. Brad was already on the move. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics assessed Maddie and suspected a broken arm. They praised her for her bravery and noted that my body had shielded her from worse injuries. The police arrived shortly after, and I provided a brief statement before we were taken to the hospital. Once there, doctors examined us in the same room. Maddie refused to leave my side, gripping my hand even as they treated her. 15 minutes later, Shauna arrived, rushing to Maddie first before giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. I finally allowed myself to relax, knowing she was there for our daughter. The exhaustion and pain caught up with me, but I reassured Shauna that I would endure anything to keep Maddie safe. As I tried to settle into the hospital bed, my body gave in. A sudden wave of pain surged through my side, triggering a violent cough. Darkness closed in as Shauna's panicked voice was the last thing I heard. 3 days later, I woke up in a quieter hospital room with Rick nearby. He immediately reassured me Maddie was fine and would be back at school soon, now something of a hero among her classmates. I struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain, and he explained my injuries. A fractured rib had punctured my lung, requiring minor surgery, but I was expected to recover fully. Rick then showed me a news segment covering the attack. The report detailed how Brad had ambushed me in broad daylight before fleeing south toward Newcastle in my stolen car. Police warned he was dangerous and urged the public to report any sightings. The news also revealed the deeper betrayal. Bridget had secretly been supporting Brad with my money, even securing an apartment for him. Now she was cooperating with authorities to track him down. The report ended with a note on my contributions to the local economy, recognizing my company, Other Gaming, as a major innovator. Byron Bay, it seemed, was rooting for my recovery. Rick then revealed the latest update. Brad had been caught. He had run a red light in Wollongong, drawing police attention, and in his attempt to escape, he crashed my car. The damage was extensive, but at that moment, I couldn't care less. Maddie was safe, and Brad was off the streets. Later that day, Maddie burst into my hospital room, her arm in a cast, with Shauna and Greg following close behind. She climbed onto my bed, her expression full of concern, but after seeing I was awake and talking, she smiled. She proudly recounted how her doctor had called her brave, but, in her eyes, I was the real hero. We spent hours reminiscing about our day at the beach, promising to go back once we both healed. The atmosphere lightened as visitors arrived. Nadine and my office team brought cards and chocolates, some of which mysteriously disappeared when Greg got his hands on them. As the evening settled, Rick took the kids for a walk, leaving me alone with Shauna. She held my hand, relief evident in her eyes. It had been a terrifying ordeal, but we had made it through. For the first time in weeks, I felt like things were finally falling into place. After spending just over a week in the hospital, I was discharged. The police investigation had moved quickly, leading to Bridget's arrest. During questioning, Brad, foolishly speaking without a lawyer, admitted she had encouraged violence against me after I kicked her out and evicted him. The attack itself had been impulsive. He hadn't planned to run into Maddie and me that day, but after hearing Bridget's anger, he saw an opportunity to act. The trial was swift. Brad was convicted of attack, theft, and property destruction, receiving a 15-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 12. Bridget, charged as an accessory, received a suspended 5-year sentence, meaning any future offense, no matter how minor, would send her straight to prison. Our divorce was finalized immediately, with the judge making it clear that I deserved no further ties to someone like her. Despite everything, I surprised everyone by offering Bridget $10,000 to start over, on the condition that she left Byron Bay for good. While recovering, I worked from home with Nadine, assisting daily. Shauna was often around as well, but if anyone assumed Nadine and I became romantically involved, they'd be wrong. She was my executive assistant, nearly 60, and happily married, not exactly a match for a guy in his early 30s. One day, I noticed Maddie's brightly decorated cast and had an idea for an in-game charity campaign. For every $10 spent in our three most popular games, we'd donate $1 to children's domestic violence charities worldwide. Initially, the finance team balked. Cutting into profits wasn't a popular decision. But within a month, the results spoke for themselves. Media coverage, including a follow-up from Carly Evans, led to a 300% increase in in-game purchases. By the end of the campaign, we had donated nearly $500,000 to charities across Australia, Poland, and South America. It became an annual initiative, proving that doing good could also be good business. Months passed, and Maddie and I recovered. When summer arrived, we returned to the beach, this time always accompanied by Shauna, Greg, and occasionally Rick. Greg had learned to walk, toddling along the shore while Shauna kept a close eye on him. Maddie and I spent hours in the waves, reclaiming the joy that had been interrupted months before. Despite a great summer, a lingering loneliness crept in. Dating again crossed my mind, but my heart wasn't in it. The few dates I attempted felt forced. Either they were intimidated by my success, or, worse, had motives too similar to Bridget's. I longed for a connection like the one I had with Shauna, but at 31 I figured I had time to figure it out. A year passed, bringing little contact with Bridget aside from occasional, abrupt conversations, each ending with a firm no from me. She wanted money, another chance, or forgiveness. None of those were on the table. Then, on my 32nd birthday, everything changed. Shauna, Nadine, and my office team threw a massive party at my house. With over 100 guests, the place buzzed with music, food, and drinks. Friends, colleagues, and even some local business owners joined the celebration. Carly Evans attended too, though under the agreement that the event remained off the record. My family was there, along with Shauna's parents and a few of Rick's relatives. As the night wore on, drinks flowed freely and my head felt lighter. I was watching Maddie chase one of my cousin's kids when I accidentally bumped into someone. Before I could properly apologize, an irritated voice cut through the music, chastising me for nearly knocking her into the pool. Turning around, I found myself face to face with a striking yet unmistakably annoyed woman. She was tall, almost 6 feet, slim but with noticeable curves, wearing a floral jumpsuit that complemented her pale skin and freckles. Her most striking feature, however, was her long, fiery red hair, braided nearly to her waist. It had the deep scarlet hue of glowing embers, the kind of color that demanded attention. But any admiration faded the moment I noticed the cigarette in her hand. Unlit or not, it was an instant turnoff. She scoffed at my no-smoking policy, dismissing it as arrogant. Undeterred, I stood firm, refusing to let her light up near my home, especially with kids around. She seemed ready to argue, but hesitated when Maddie arrived, her hands on her hips, backed by her friend and little Greg, all three standing like a tiny army ready to defend my decision. Seeing the determination in Maddie's stance, the woman reluctantly pocketed the cigarette. But, as I turned to address the kids, Greg misunderstood the moment. Thinking I was about to confront her, he stepped forward and gave her a light push. What none of us considered was that she was standing right at the pool's edge, balanced on towering heels. The gentle shove was enough to send her off balance. Her eyes widened in horror as she grabbed onto my arm, dragging me down with her. The splash was inevitable. I surfaced, laughing, but she came up sputtering, furious. Glaring at me, she snapped about how there was nothing funny about the situation. I disagreed. Falling into a pool was classic slapstick, and if you didn't laugh, you'd probably cry. Her frown deepened as she wiped water from her face. The kids, along with several nearby guests, were already laughing at the unexpected spectacle. She crossed her arms. "Who the hell is Karen?" I smirked. "You, apparently." And just like that, my life took another unexpected turn. The cigarette she had planned to light earlier floated between us, a tiny bubble forming on the surface before popping. I smirked at the woman still fuming beside me. Her face turned red, and for a moment I wondered if I had pushed her too far. Clearly irritated, she snapped that she wasn't Karen, and had only been looking for a quiet place to smoke without bothering anyone. The way she glared at me made it clear she wasn't used to being challenged. Rick arrived with Shauna, laughing as he tossed us towels. He barely held it together when he realized who had fallen into the pool with me. Meanwhile, most of the guests had already lost interest, their chuckles fading back into party chatter. As I climbed out, dripping and amused, Shauna teased that I had ended up in the pool sooner than expected. I struck a dramatic pose, earning more laughter from the group before heading inside to change. Rick, still grinning, handed a towel to the woman, now introduced as Lily, his cousin from Kingscliff. Apparently, she had been going through a rough time, and the family thought a change of scenery might help. That explained a lot. The rest of the night was easygoing, the pool incident becoming a running joke. Even Greg got a light scolding for pushing, though Maddie later took it upon herself to apologize to Lily. As the party wound down, I noticed Lily sitting with Rick and Shauna while the kids watched a movie. With most guests gone and the catering staff cleaning up, I poured myself another Bundy and Coke before joining them. Lily still looked annoyed, but at least she wasn't dripping wet anymore. I jokingly asked if pushing people into pools was a regular party trick or just a birthday special. She quipped back that she only did it to arrogant men who banned her from smoking, then threw a pointed look my way. Her expression shifted when she realized Greg wasn't my son. Confused, she glanced between Shauna and me, piecing it together. Rick, sensing the tension, took over. He explained that, despite our past, Shauna and I were best friends. There was no lingering drama, just mutual respect and co-parenting. Even he had never felt the need for jealousy, knowing we had long since moved on. Lily seemed skeptical but didn't press the issue. Instead, recognition flickered across her face. She recalled a business case from years ago that Rick had been involved in, one that had made headlines. She connected the dots. That was me. I gave a careful nod, used to the moment people either idolized me or fished for details. But Lily didn't do either. Instead, I explained Maddie's fierce protectiveness, how she had witnessed things no child should and still carried the fear that I might not always be there. Greg, just a toddler, had only wanted to back up his big sister, not realizing his tiny push would send someone into the pool. She listened, her expression unreadable, then quietly admitted she had recently fallen back into smoking. A bad habit, she called it. Her voice cracked slightly before she excused herself, walking off to collect herself. Rick subtly signaled that there was more to her story, but now wasn't the time. When she returned, the conversation took a lighter turn, shifting to Star Wars. I debated a plot point with Rick, convinced that Mando would eventually have to fight for the Darksaber. To my surprise, Lily jumped in, casually quoting the show's signature line, "This is the way." It caught us all off guard. For the first time that night, she smiled. A real smile, not the defensive smirk she had worn earlier. Beneath the tough exterior, there was something else. A glimmer of someone who had once been different. As the night wound down, we made arrangements for everyone to stay over. The kids were already asleep inside, and none of us were in a state to drive. Lily took the guest room, while Rick and Shauna settled into their usual space. Maddie had her own room, of course. Lying in bed, I found myself thinking about her. The striking redhead with the sharp tongue, the hidden sadness, and the cigarette she never ended up smoking. It was just a shame she smoked at all. The next few days were spent at my place, with Rick, Shauna, and, by extension, Lily joining us. We fell into an easy routine. Mornings at the beach, afternoons swimming, eating fish and chips, and building sandcastles. Despite her guarded nature and the smoking habit she never quite indulged in, Lily was surprisingly good company. One evening, as we sat watching Shauna play in the pool with Maddie while Rick entertained Greg, I found myself asking Lily about her past. The question slipped out after a few drinks, and her sharp glare made it clear she wasn't eager to share. But something in my tone, or maybe the way I framed it, softened her stance. After a long silence, she finally spoke. She had lost a child. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I didn't interrupt. Instead, I let her find her own way through the story. She had been with her boyfriend, Aaron, for just over 6 months when she discovered she was pregnant. Unexpected, but within a week, something she had come to cherish. Aaron, however, didn't share her excitement. As her belly grew, so did his drinking, his late nights, his resentment. Then came the night it all fell apart. A drunken argument spiraled out of control. Their neighbors had called the police after hearing their shouting, but Aaron, in his intoxicated state, thought she had called them herself. In a blind rage, he shoved her. The fall changed everything. 2 days later, she lost the baby. Lily barely whispered the words, her voice hollow. Surgery had been necessary to save her own life. The only people she had ever told were a police officer and the surgeon who treated her. Now, for some reason, she was trusting me. The weight of her story settled between us. I placed a hand on her arm, offering what little comfort I could. She looked up, her expression raw, and I told her how sorry I was. She gave a small nod of appreciation but barely held herself together. After a moment, I hesitated before asking if I could hug her. Her usual fiery defiance flickered in her eyes before she finally let her guard down. Without another word, she stepped forward, arms outstretched like a child seeking comfort. I held her as she broke. Her body shook with deep, aching sobs, the kind that had been trapped inside for too long. Across the pool, Shauna and Rick exchanged a glance, understanding the moment without interfering. I led Lily to a quieter corner, letting her cry against my chest, clutching onto me like I was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Minutes passed before she finally pulled away, wiping her tear-streaked face with a tissue Shauna had discreetly left on the table. Her mascara was smudged, her eyes puffy, but she seemed lighter, as if a part of her burden had been lifted. We sat in silence for a while, sipping water, before she finally spoke again. The past months had been a haze of depression, antidepressants, and hormonal treatments. She admitted she had picked up smoking again as a distraction, though I had yet to see her actually light one. I made a quiet joke about it, and, to my relief, she laughed. The conversation drifted, shifting to easier topics. She asked about my relationship with Shauna, and I explained that while our marriage hadn't worked, we had built a strong friendship for Maddie's sake. When she asked about Bridget, I was honest. I had married her for the wrong reasons, mistaking loneliness for love. In the end, I was just a paycheck to her. Lily listened, her expression softening. For the first time, her usual edge was gone. Then, almost as an afterthought, she muttered that Bridget had been a fool. Any woman would be lucky to have me. I smirked, teasing her about that particular choice of words. She nodded, almost shyly, and added, "If only I could be like that." Her voice trailed off, but the unfinished thought hung between us. I didn't think. I leaned in and kissed her. She froze for half a second, surprised, but then her eyes fluttered shut, and I felt her melt into it. It wasn't rushed or desperate, just something that had been waiting to happen. When we finally pulled apart, she smiled, lacing her fingers through mine. "That was unexpected," she admitted. I raised an eyebrow, feigning offense. "But nice," she quickly added with a grin. I leaned back, smirking. "This is the way," she giggled. For the first time since I had met her, Lily looked at peace. Over the next hour, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily and I opened up about our pasts. She revealed that her ex-boyfriend was now in prison, serving time for multiple charges, including attack and drunk driving. The night he attacked her, he had come home highly intoxicated, nearly 3 times over the legal limit. His imprisonment felt like justice, but it hadn't erased what she had endured. As night settled in, Shauna and the kids emerged from the house, with Rick carrying boxes of fresh, wood-fired pizza. The scent of homemade Italian sauce, melted mozzarella, and basil filled the air. The earlier conversation still lingered, but Lily subtly steered it in a lighter direction, offering just enough details to satisfy Shauna's curiosity without revealing too much. It was clear that Shauna would have questions for me later. After dinner, the group parted ways. Maddie stayed with me for the week, while Shauna, Rick, and Lily headed home. As Lily and I said goodbye, our hug, though brief, carried a quiet warmth, something neither Shauna nor Rick missed. Later that night, Maddie, always perceptive, brought up the obvious. She had noticed the connection between Lily and me, and pointed out that despite her guarded nature, Lily genuinely seemed to care. But she also recognized that Lily was carrying deep wounds. Maddie asked about her past, but I kept my promise, explaining that Lily had confided in me and it wasn't my place to share. Maddie accepted that without argument, showing a maturity beyond her years. That night, as I worked in my office, Shauna called, confirming what I already suspected. Lily had spent the entire ride home talking about me. Even Rick had been surprised by how quickly she had opened up. Shauna hinted at Lily's past, implying that her previous relationship had been deeply abusive. I confirmed it, but remained tight-lipped on the details. Shauna quickly shifted to the real question. Whether I liked Lily, I admitted I did. She was intelligent, witty, and shared my love for science fiction. More importantly, she didn't seem to mind my geeky side. Shauna, in her usual way, pointed out the obvious, that Lily was also incredibly beautiful. Though I brushed it off, we both knew she was right. She suggested getting involved, offering either her help or her interference, depending on how things played out. I agreed, unsure of where things were going, but open to seeing what unfolded. For the next 3 days, I heard nothing from Lily or Shauna, but Maddie's knowing glances at dinner made it clear something was in motion. I focused on work, immersing myself in development projects. Then, on Wednesday night, I walked into my house to find Shauna, Lily, and Maddie comfortably settled in the living room, wine glasses in hand. The rich aroma of carbonara filled the air. They had planned this. After a quick greeting, I excused myself to my office, unsure of what the evening held. A few minutes later, Lily appeared in the doorway, about to call me for dinner, when she stopped, her eyes scanning the room. She took in the multi-monitor setup, the frame posters, and the industry awards lining the walls. Slowly, realization dawned. She recognized the games, titles she had spent hours playing, games that had provided an escape during her darkest moments. Pulling out her phone, she checked the loading screen of one of them and saw it. Other gaming. When she turned to me, it was with surprise and a newfound understanding. She hadn't realized that the games that had once been her refuge were created by the very man sitting in front of her. With a nod, she processed the revelation, then simply told me dinner was ready. The conversation wasn't over, it was just beginning. Dinner that night was exceptional. Shauna and Maddie had stepped aside, letting Lily take full control of the kitchen, and she delivered. The fettuccine carbonara was rich and creamy, paired with crispy garlic bread, and dessert was vanilla ice cream infused with real vanilla bean. Every bite was indulgent, and by the time we finished eating, we were stuffed. Shauna, clearly impressed, kept watching Lily, though Lily herself remained unusually quiet despite our praise. Something was off. After dinner, Shauna took Maddie upstairs to get ready for bed, but not before throwing me pointed looks, silently urging me to talk to her. As the house settled into an evening hum, I poured 2 glasses of a smooth local dessert wine and handed one to Lily. We sat together on the sofa, the warm glow of the room contrasting with the weight hanging between us. Lily seemed distant, lost in thought. I asked if something was wrong, if we had done anything to upset her. She quickly dismissed the idea but hesitated before finally exhaling in defeat. There was something heavy in her voice when she spoke again. She admitted that sometimes, just when she felt she might be able to rise above everything that had happened in her life, reality would set in, reminding her that some things were simply out of reach. Her words carried the weight of someone who had been through too much, someone afraid to believe in something only to have it slip away. I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I tried to relate. I told her that my separation from Bridget had left a void in me that I still didn't know how to fill. I had loved Bridget, or at least believed I had, and when the truth came out, something inside me broke. Moving past it felt like an impossible task, something I hadn't yet figured out how to bridge. Lily nodded, seeming to understand, but when she finally met my gaze, there was something raw in her expression. Then she said it, "I am your gap." At first, I laughed, not because I meant to, but because I didn't understand. She scowled, clearly frustrated, so I asked what she meant. She hesitated, then admitted what we both already knew. There was something undeniable between us. The kiss alone had been proof of that. She had never felt anything so powerful from a single kiss, something she hadn't wanted to end. But, despite that, she had convinced herself that we could never work. She recounted the past few days, how she had met Shauna and Maddie, how Rick had welcomed her, how she had stumbled into my life by accident. She even laughed at how my 3-year-old nephew had pushed her into a pool simply because she'd wanted to smoke. But her voice cracked when she reached the part that had shaken her the most. Standing in my office, seeing my world, the posters, the awards, the work I had built since I was a teenager, had solidified something in her mind. She couldn't fit into it. She saw herself as insignificant. A woman from nowhere, working a simple office job, making less than 60 grand a year. She worried she would be seen the same way I had come to see Bridget, a woman only after money, a lifestyle. She didn't want to be a gold digger. She didn't want me to see her as one. Her words struck something deep in me. This woman who had suffered humiliation, loss, and betrayal. The woman who had opened up to me before she even knew who I was, who I had built myself to be. She thought she wasn't worthy. She thought I would compare her to my ex-wife. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Taking her hand, I led her outside, walking in silence under the night sky. Her fingers tightened around mine as we made our way inside to my bedroom. Closing the door behind us, I pulled her into the bathroom. The steam from the shower filled the space as I undressed her, taking in every inch of her. Pale skin, freckles dusting her face and collarbone, toned muscles from hours in the gym, evidence of the strength she had fought to regain. We stepped into the water together. That night, I showed her in every way that she wasn't just someone passing through my life. She wasn't a gap I couldn't bridge. She was the bridge. The next month felt like something out of a dream. Lily practically moved in overnight, though neither of us acknowledged it at first. Instead of rushing into labels, we spent time outside the house, going on dates, getting to know each other beyond the physical pull that had already consumed us. But every night we returned home together, making up for lost time in ways neither of us had expected. Nadine was the first to call me out on it. After noticing my frequent absences from morning meetings, she simply raised an eyebrow and smirked, offering no comment but clearly aware of the situation. Lily, meanwhile, settled into a new routine. She found a job at the local council, continuing the administrative work she had done in Kingscliff. Her fears about not fitting into my world turned out to be unfounded. I had little interest in the elite social circles my business contacts ran in, preferring to keep things simple. The first real test of our relationship came when I had to leave for a quick business trip to Sydney. It was only one night, but for Lily, it was enough to stir old fears. Over the months, she had grown anxious whenever I wasn't home by midnight, her mind flashing back to the loneliness she had once known. Sensing this, I rearranged my schedule and invited her to come with me. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything to her. She sat in on my meetings, even charming one of the board members when she introduced herself as my girlfriend. That night, in a quiet hotel room, we said it for the first time. We were in love. 12 months after the night she fell into my pool, I proposed. The reaction was immediate. Shauna and Maddie nearly exploded with joy. Our wedding took place in the backyard, a simple ceremony with close friends and family. Rick stood as my best man, while Shauna took her rightful place as my best man, because there was no other title that fit. As we exchanged vows, the moment the officiant said you may kiss the bride, Rick and Shauna turned and pushed us both, fully dressed, into the pool. The photos turned out perfect. Our laughter, the water splashing around us, our hands clasped tightly even as we fell. Our honeymoon took us through Europe, nearly a month of exploring, eating, and learning even more about each other. We argued at times, like any couple, but we always talked through it. Lily, however, had a jealous streak, something I quickly learned was non-negotiable. Aside from Shauna, Maddie, and Nadine, any woman who so much as looked at me was met with the fiery wrath of a redhead who had no patience for nonsense. Any lingering doubts about Lily's loyalty disappeared after two key events. The first happened at a bachelorette party she attended with Shauna. A couple of drunk men at a club wouldn't take no for an answer, even trying to drag her outside. The second one put his hands on her. She knocked him out. In court, security footage showed her repeatedly screaming that she was a married woman and that her body belonged to her husband. The judge gave both men 6 months of probation. The case was closed. The second event happened about a month after our first wedding anniversary. Lily met Bridget. It only took 60 seconds for her to realize something was wrong. And that was when everything changed again. Lily had never seen a picture of Bridget, nor had I ever described her in detail, yet she recognized her instantly. That afternoon, while we relaxed in the pool, she recounted the unexpected encounter. Rick and Shauna sat nearby, while Maddie and Greg played in the water, their laughter filling the air. Earlier that day, Lily had scheduled a meeting at a cafe with someone listed as B. Brown. When the woman arrived and took a seat across from her, there was an immediate sense of unease. She had greeted her politely, but the stranger just stared, assessing her with an unnerving intensity. The conversation quickly took a sharp turn. At first, the woman made a passive-aggressive remark about Lily's looks, vaguely referencing Tim. But then she clarified. She wasn't talking about Tim at all. She was talking about Aaron. The name sent a chill through Lily. Aaron was a part of her past she had long buried, yet this woman not only knew about him but claimed to have been tracking her. She explained that after Aaron's release from prison, she had convinced him that Lily belonged with him and had been working behind the scenes to bring them back together. At that moment, Lily realized who she was dealing with. It wasn't Aaron she needed to worry about. It was Bridget. The woman had lost all pretense of civility, her words laced with bitterness. She accused Lily of taking what was rightfully hers, insisting that she had been Mrs. Otter first and that she planned to reclaim her place. It wasn't just about Tim. It was about the life she believed had been stolen from her. Lily's shock turned to fury, but she kept her composure. Bridget, however, didn't. As Lily stood to leave, Bridget lunged, grabbing her and dragging her back toward the table, screaming for her to let go of Tim and return to Aaron. The scene escalated quickly, drawing the attention of everyone in the cafe. Someone called the police. Rather than fight back physically, Lily chose her words carefully. She made it clear that Bridget's time had passed and that any attempt to reclaim Tim was futile. Then she delivered the final blow. She was pregnant. She had just received confirmation that morning. Bridget went silent, stunned. Before she could react further, the police arrived. She was arrested on the spot. Later that night, as Lily told me everything, she apologized for revealing the pregnancy to Bridget before telling me. I could only laugh. If anything, it had made the news hit even harder. The next day, Bridget was released but was served with a restraining order, preventing her from coming near me, Lily, Maddie, Shauna, Rick, or Greg. She disappeared from our lives after that. A few years later, we heard she had married a criminal on the Gold Coast. The marriage didn't last, and she eventually ended up in prison. What was expected to be twins turned out to be triplets. Early one Wednesday morning, Lily went into labor. 2 hours later, via cesarean section, Connor, Adam, and their sister Jessie were born. The doctors had recommended surgery to minimize risks, and I stayed by Lily's side the entire time, overwhelmed with admiration for her strength. The first few months were a blur of exhaustion. I took a 3-month leave from other gaming to help at home, and we brought in a full-time nanny. But the real support came from Shauna, Rick, and Maddie, who were always there when we needed them. Even Greg, now a little older, tried to help in his own way. Life became a constant cycle of feedings, diapers, and sleepless nights. Lily adjusted to motherhood quickly, though the physical toll was evident. Her body changed, her patience was tested, and exhaustion led to inevitable tension. There were arguments, some bad enough that I stormed out once, cooling off at Shauna and Rick's. But we always found our way back to each other. And when the babies finally gave us a moment of peace, our reunions were passionate enough to make up for every lost second. Now, 3 years later, our weekends had returned to a familiar rhythm. That afternoon by the pool, Lily had teased me about how Star Trek's William Riker had a habit of sweeping women off their feet, joking that I should do the same more often. So naturally, I picked her up and threw her into the water. She retaliated immediately, pulling me in with her, both of us laughing as the kids cheered and splashed around. It wasn't long before the entire family was in the pool, playing together. Later, as we dried off in the sun, Shauna pulled out a deck of cards. As the game unfolded, she leaned over and whispered that Lily was cheating. The last time she had said those words, my world had nearly fallen apart. This time, I just smiled. The mirrored doors behind us gave Lily a perfect view of my cards. She knew exactly what she was doing. Shauna, amused, asked if I was really going to let her get away with it. Lily, unfazed, laid down her next hand and smirked. She was in control of the game, and she knew it. And later that night, she was right. I did win.